Thank you for listening to Coffee with the Crossing. My name is Cody Most. I'm the media director of the Crossing Fellowship. In today's episode, I'm joined with Jonathan Phillips, the worship and youth pastor, and Eric Most, the lead pastor. We are going to be discussing who we are and why we do what we do. We are super excited to share this with you, so let's jump in. We'll start off with a few questions just for fun. Eric, what is the craziest thing you've ever done? Out of the many crazy things you've done.
Yeah, I think Jafili got asked this question on one of the podcasts, and he was asking legal or illegal.
Yeah, I may have filtered my answer a little bit.
Was it a little filtered? I'll bet it was. Yeah, so probably one we used to do dry ice bombs in college, which now I think they'd probably label you a terrorist and put you in jail. But they were quite effective, and so there was a night where my buddy and I planted a few dry ice bombs around the campus, and then we were getting ready to put one. We had a friend of ours that slept really close to ground level near a window, and so we were going to put one kind of over in that vicinity to see if we could rock him out of bed.
Oh my gosh.
And but we kind of came up over this rise, and there was a security guy right there, and so we didn't even say anything to one another. We just ran past him, and I went one way, and my buddy went the other way. And our car was parked in a neighborhood beyond this soccer field. So I will never forget looking over at my friend who was running outside of himself. Fortunately, the security guard decided to chase him instead of me. Mm-hmm. And so he was trying to outrun the security guy, which he did. And we got into the neighborhood, and then we realized we were in the wrong block. Of course, by then we're so flustered, and all of a sudden the bomb started going off.
Oh, jeez.
So we were running through people's front yards and then into the other people's backyards, like not even getting to our vehicle so we could get out of there. That was one of a few crazy things that I have done.
So I don't know about you, Cody, but I just pictured Eric running with explosions going off in the background, except it's
slow-mo.
Yep. Action film there.
Yeah, it was pretty scary.
We'll have to make something that.
Oh yeah, we can do that.
And then for you, John, who is the most influential person in your life?
Ooh, the most influential person in my life. See, mine kind of changes depending on like the phase of life that I'm in. But I guess the one person apart from Jesus, and we'll give the typical answer there, Jesus. The one person who's kind of remained constant through all the phases of life has been my dad. So I was raised a pastor's kid, and I got to see the downsides of being in ministry or being a family in ministry, and just getting to see both of my parents constantly love us kids and serve Jesus. And they have gone through a lot of crap in their life, a lot. And still seeing them want to serve God after going through so much stuff, and seeing them thrive in that area has just been so amazing. So it hasn't necessarily been like my parents directly ministering to me, but actually seeing them serve God has been a huge impact on my life.
Yeah, I can agree with that one.
You only say that because your dad's right next to you.
He's right next to me.
No.
PK. For me, most important question, it'll probably pop up in every episode, is what is your favorite coffee? And I had INL coffee first time at camping. And that was pretty good.
Not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor. But my favorite is Black Rifle Coffee out of Texas, I believe. Not a sponsor yet. But they're a veteran-based, veteran-run, owned, operated coffee company that is really good. And then the last question for all of us is, apart from the church, what is something you've learned in quarantine?
We're going to start with Eric on this one.
Apart from the church?
Apart from the church. As in our previous episode, we talked about how we learned something in the vision and the mission of the church. Now it's more just broad. What have you learned in quarantine? It can still involve the church, but...
Yeah. Well, maybe it was something that I've known and learned, but it maybe accentuated in quarantine, is family dinners are really important around the table. Really, really important. Like, they need to be prioritized. And I don't know why that seems revolutionary, because it's like, that's pretty simple. But there is something that happens when a family eats around the table, and we've lost it. We grab our food, go watch a movie together. It's still not the same, because it's not interaction. Or we just, everybody grabs their stuff and goes and does their own thing, but we don't intentionally get around the table and look at each other. So I'd say family nights around the table and family games. So playing games together, something where you're interacting with one another is just really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think for me, and again, it wasn't necessarily something that I learned as much as it was re-emphasized to me, but the importance of human contact, which kind of goes along the lines of what you were saying. But man, we did youth group for it was like 12 weeks over Zoom, and it was fun, and it was all right. But the second that I actually got to see some of the students face to face, and just sitting there and talking, we realized how important just face to face contact and conversation is for people, just to remain mentally healthy, getting to just kind of see that and experience that, because there were a lot of times, not just with the students, but with me, where, I would finish our Zoom meeting and just kind of sit there on the couch and just be like, this is not relationship. This isn't the way that we were designed, to just constantly be seeing people through technology is not at all fulfilling for any type of relationship. And I'm extroverted, so the introvert over here is like, maybe we're pretty good, but yeah, it was it's just huge, the man, just how we take for granted actually being able to spend time with people in their physical presence, and just the difference that actually makes.
Yeah, for me, it was another re-emphasis on the career path I wanted to take in my life. My dad and I managed a ranch for like 3 or 4 years together. I grew up working on it, but then recently it's just God's been tugging on my heart to jump into like church operations, which has changed dramatically in the last 2 months to now it's mainly media is church operations now, and so I get to do that, and it's
Yes, we are
Yes.
still recording
Yes.
in the middle of the podcast.
I'm so sorry. There's a guy at the front door. So sorry.
John will handle that.
John will handle that.
Ministry in the middle of the podcast.
Our one of our children's directors just came in and stole John. So we will
Yeah, keep going.
continue.
Yeah.
So yeah, just knowing what God's put me here for is, and actually getting to live it has been awesome. So
Cool.
with our topic of why we do what we do, what are some of the future goals that the Crossing has?
Yeah, so I think COVID has maybe accentuated. It hasn't really changed our focus, but really has maybe helped us to realize how important our digital presence is and social media presence is, and that's a significant change in the question of how do we reach this next generation, and understanding the next generation is very digitally minded, and so some of the future goals, realizing that not only do we have a church that meets together, but we also have a church that tunes in via live stream, and they're nowhere near Gothenburg, so they may never be able to actually gather here. So how do we minister to those two different churches, and do that well? And I think, the future goals is becoming really efficient and really good at ministering to those two. I think a goal of making that live stream as personal as possible, and so trying to be creative around that and have good ideas around that. So, and then I think one of the big things that I would love to see the Crossing begin to do more and more and more of. We've had to be more focused than I have wanted us to be in finishing our facility, and so I would love for us to get to a place where we're not really having to focus so much on the physical part of our facility and things like that, and then directing funds that would go to the physical building, directing those funds to how can we communicate in a very tangible, generous way that we are for our communities. I think the church, maybe it has some programs for its communities, but it's more for the church people, and we in our mission of seeing people meet, follow, and love Jesus, and wanting to be a church that unchurched people love to engage with. In our mission, one of the things at the heart of that is to be able to communicate that we as a church are for our communities. We're not against them. And one of the best ways to do that is through generosity and just no strings attached, generosity. And so one of my goals, probably my biggest goal, is to expand that piece of our ministry, so that I would love it if, a few years down the road, if 5 years from now, if Kozad, Gothenburg, Brady, Arnold, Eustis, Farnham, if that target area would, if the crossing ceased to exist, they would be seriously bummed. They would seriously be bummed because of the impact that we are making in their community, saying that we are for them. One of the other big future goals is to be able to expand campuses into other rural towns. And so we're seriously looking at that, of how the best way to do that is. It is a financial journey, so we're weighing those options. But I feel like it would be very, very selfish of us to really enjoy being able to engage people who don't have a relationship with Jesus and see them coming to Christ, and then just kind of keep it all to ourselves. And we feel like we have been called to, in a rural context, be able to bring some of the things that we have enjoyed and bring that to some other rural towns where there's couples there, there's people there in those towns who are just, they're where we were 13 years ago, just kind of frustrated, and wanting to engage with a ministry that would just really be laser focused on reaching the next generation. So we don't have all of that figured out, but we are working on it. So those are a couple future goals.
I know for the media, what some of my goals are is to, with the podcasts, and hopefully we'll get some other videos out that kind of show behind the scenes of what all happens. Because people come in, they see us do a service, and then they walk out, and they don't really see what all happens behind the scenes. I mean, we have volunteers come in throughout the week, early on Sunday mornings, and it's just crazy to see the behind the scenes on what makes it all happen. The life groups that happen, the life change that happens, and also just trying to get some leadership stuff out to other people for like fathers in the house, business owners, other churches, and even high schoolers trying to lead their classmates and stuff. So that's some of my future goals, is to just kind of show behind the scenes.
Cool.
So we're at future goals.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm back.
Jonathan's back.
So we talked about campuses.
Okay.
We talked about being generosity and for our communities. So
I gotcha.
a couple.
So future goal for me, I've got a couple different ones, but we talk about being a church for the next generation, and I'm the youth pastor, so I mean that's kind of my direct area of ministry is the next generation. So one of the things that I would love to see, that we're starting to see on Sunday morning with some of our volunteers, is getting the students serving before they even feel connected. And some of the students, they've been serving before they even have a relationship with Jesus, and just showing them the importance of serving and how that helps you grow in your relationship with God. Because I'm sure you've probably talked about it, but so many times we get stuck in a rut of just consuming, that we don't ever pour out what it is we're consuming, and then we just get fat and lazy and sit on a couch. But when we actually begin to use what's poured into us, that's when we begin to actually grow in a healthy way. So yeah, getting to see some students actually own the vision of the church and having the desire to see their friends meet, follow, and love Jesus That's huge. And so this goal, like this year, some of the goals we have are definitely about getting students involved on a Sunday morning so they can serve, but then also training students to take the love of Jesus and to take it to their schools and take it to their friends. So we don't have a specific goal yet, but in a couple weeks we're going on a trip called Lead the Cause, and we're taking 7 students on this trip. And basically, at the end of the week, we're going to sit down as a group and we're going to come up with goals for the next year and say, okay, what is it we want to do, and how do we want to reach our schools and our families in this coming year? And so I guess my goal is to let the students come up with goals for the next year, and it'll be pretty awesome to kind of see them take ownership and leadership in that area.
Awesome. Another question that some of the listeners might be asking is why does the crossing exist? And I think we say a lot about the next generation. The next generation, reaching the unchurched, our communities are all something we're passionate about. So to you personally, why does the crossing exist?
So I'd say for me, and this isn't like a vision statement or anything like that, but I would say one of the things that drives us is to be a church that serves people that churches forget about. Because there's, in one of our earlier podcasts, I think it was Barry who shared about someone who had been rejected by other people and things like that, and once they came, they got to experience love and acceptance. And we hear stories, not just as a church or leadership, but individually, we hear stories of people that feel rejected in life, that feel rejected by their family, feel rejected by their job, and it seems like nobody really cares about them or does anything to kind of focus on them. And so one of the things why I think the crossing exists, just based off of our ministry and philosophy of doing that, is to show people that they're loved, to show the people that aren't cared about that they're cared about, and to demonstrate that to them, but then to get to introduce them to the one that ultimately loves and cares about them, and that's Jesus Christ.
I think for me, it's it kind of answers the question of what breaks your heart. And the thing that breaks my heart is my generation, my peers, for the most part, quit going to church. It was the generation that stopped. And they stopped for various reasons. So, I think in large part because the culture had changed so dramatically, and the church was so against that change that the church says we're not changing anything, not our method, nothing. And church had been done, and it was understandable because church was done the same way for over 100 years. And so the method and the mission kind of got intermingled. So if you changed anything, it felt like maybe you were changing the mission or you're changing the message, when in fact, we weren't. But so now that my peers are midlife, and they have lived without God for 25, 30 years, they have broken themselves. Many of them are divorced. Many of them have had a very painful 25, 30 years. And in the middle of that pain, they think God might have a solution to this. And so, and they're thinking, if I'm going to connect with God, if God could help me, then I should go to a church because they will help me connect with God. All of that is exactly right on. The problem is when they go to a church that hasn't changed method. Their message might be right on, but their method hasn't changed. It seems irrelevant. It doesn't the message doesn't connect to the felt need that they have. And when that message doesn't connect with the felt need, it's irrelevant to them. And so they walk in and they walk out, and the most tragic thing I think that could ever happen is for an individual or a couple who desperately needs Jesus to walk out of a church with the thought that God can't help me, that the answer isn't there either. That breaks my heart because the answer is there. And it just has to do with changing a method so that those two dots can get connected, because we've been able to see that connect, and oh my gosh, it's the best thing you'll ever experience in this world is to see someone who's searching so hard be able to connect those dots and find what it is they're looking for. So that's, in my mind, why the crossing exists.
And then, kind of going off of that, the next generation, why is it that we are passionate about them? We all know that it's the next generation, so it's coming up. But why is it that when you come to the crossing, you hear the next generation? We want the next generation. Why is that one of the main focuses, I should say?
Because my generation got skipped. That's why. And you're just one generation away from a culture that lives without the values that Jesus has. Whenever a culture will come underneath how God's made the world to work, and they will embrace the value system that Jesus had, it'll be a sweet society to live in. And so we were a couple of generations like rejecting those. So if we want our nation to have civility in it again, if we want this to be a sweet place to live, if we want strong families, if we want all of the things that make a great society, we have to reach the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I think one of the things for me that makes me so passionate about student ministry and reaching the next generation, when you think of junior high and high schoolers today, one of the huge things for them is social media, which that's big for most people, but for students, like if you think of TikTok, like the new trend of everybody being on TikTok, we have students that are in our youth group that have gone viral on TikTok, but literally they're viral for about a day, and then all of a sudden nobody even knows, their video exists or anything like that. And so students now are constantly trying to reach the next thing that gives them a high. And when they finally get that, it lasts for maybe 24 hours before it's gone, and they have to pursue the next thing and try to constantly get that fame or get that image out there projected of themselves. And one of the things that makes me passionate about the next generation is helping them see the only high that's going to stick, and that's Jesus. And when students actually realize that, and they begin to see how fleeting or pointless chasing after the things of this world are, and actually understanding, how secure they can be in Christ, but not only take that understanding on themselves, but begin to share that with others. Because man, this generation that's coming up, I honestly believe they are going to be the generation that changes the world in some way. They really are, just because they're so passionate, they're so driven. If we can just capture a little bit of that drive and put Jesus in there, oh my gosh, the change that this next generation could make, it would completely change the church as we know it. Mm-hmm. It really would. And so being able to capture that and show them the only thing that matters to be passionate about, and letting them go loose and just take the truth of the gospel, it would be an amazing thing to get to witness that.
So with that, what do you think that the best way to reach this next generation is? And is that what methods have we implemented to reach the next generation? I know for the media side, we've been building our presence online. This podcast is a part of that as well. Some of the videos we've made, we're trying to, when they're looking at their phones and scrolling through it, they see us pop up, and our message is, we are for you. We want you to come and be a part of who we are. And then we're passionate about Jesus too. So it kind of shows them that we can have fun, be passionate about Jesus, and be online.
Yeah.
So
I think one of the best ways, and probably the best way for us to actually reach the next generation, is to equip the next generation to reach themselves. When we were on the camping trip, I think I said this, Barry said this, I'm sure you've said it before. Us as adults are never going to be able to reach students the same way that they're going to be able to reach their peers. They're never going to listen to us the same way that they would listen to a friend. And so if we can, I keep saying this, but if we can equip just one student that has leadership quality and leadership potential to be that mouthpiece, or to be that voice to speak to the rest of their class, the rest of their friends, the rest of their generation, that's going to be the best way for us to reach them. And sometimes in ministry, it's hard to, want to take the credit, for like, wow, I'm reaching all these people. But it's one of the concepts that we're constantly taught in leadership is being open-handed in ministry, and realizing that, hey, this young person is far better suited to reach these students than I ever will be. And so pouring myself into this one student so that they can pour into others is, man, that's the only way that we're going to be able to reach this next generation, is allowing them to take the leadership and pour into their peers.
I think, I certainly, it is a discovery process. I concur with Jafili. I love that. Equipping them and sending them loose to reach their own peers. It has to have, they're very digitally minded, so it has to involve cutting edge technology. But because of all of the digital side of things, there's a lack of real personal connection, and so being able to draw them into, like our high school students, our high school ministry, when they get together, they have small groups. They don't play games. Well, that's not like the old youth ministry I ran. I mean, we always played games, but now they hunger for that personal connection so much. Could we just get together and have a face-to-face conversation with one another? And they want that, and so providing that for them. But then I think from my standpoint as a lead pastor, practical teaching. How does living a gospel-centered life, how does that impact you personally? And helping them to connect the dots that trusting Jesus and following him will make you better at life. And helping them connect the dots of how that's going to make you better at life. And when you are better at life, life gets better. And for many of them, life isn't very good. It's really hard. They have tough family situations. They have tough school situations. And so when you help them connect those dots, then I think following Jesus is extremely appealing for them. And so from my standpoint, helping them connect the dots on a practical teaching level of how the scripture really does help us follow, helps us be able to connect how following Jesus will make us better at life. So.
And with the connecting the dots thing, I could talk about youth all day, sorry. But with connecting the dots, I don't know about you guys, but when I was in like junior high and high school, I had different compartments where it was like, okay, here's my God box, here's my sports, here's my friends, here's my family, like all of those different things. And it really didn't click with me that honestly, all of those boxes were inside of the God box. And so helping the students to realize that God, a relationship with God really does affect every single area of your life. It doesn't just affect you on Wednesday nights or Sunday mornings. It affects every area of your life. I think when a student realizes that, it can really make a huge difference for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we'll reach more into it in later podcasts. We'll talk about the youth ministry, the worship ministry, leadership, life groups. We'll be posting a lot more podcasts and videos, and so thank you for watching online with YouTube and Facebook and listening through the podcast app or iTunes or wherever you stumbled upon us. We can't wait to talk to you later.
See ya.